All right, all right. Fresh off another Cyhawk victory. Hello, hello. Welcome to my post-game thoughts for Iowa's victory over Iowa State tonight. Always great to be able to call it a Hawkeye State after these games. A really stressful game. Didn't know if you'd be able to say that for a little bit there, but the girls rallied there at the end, showed poise. I think you got to give credit to Iowa State for doing a lot of things to make things difficult for us. Bill's obviously a great coach. Did a great job controlling pace, and that's difficult because sometimes with a young team like Iowa State has, they can get sped up, but they did a good job of not getting sped up generally, probably until late in the game, which we'll get into. But showed a lot of talent. Addie Brown, shot making at Bristow, didn't show as much as I think she'll eventually show near the end of the year, but she has a lot of skill. You can tell just even the brief cameos. Addie Crooks is a low down low, can score inside, showed the range, took her first two threes of the year in this game and made one of them. Great touch from free throw line too, so she looks like she's going to be a player as well. A lot of exciting pieces there, but it's still Hawkeye State and still a great showing for my girls to be able to pull through. And on top of that, you look at a game like this where you even look at the box score and, man, almost all the statistical categories are dead even. It really felt like that kind of game where it was a 50-50 game in the balance. There were times when maybe Iowa got up to a 3-possession lead, but this game was pretty much within 1 or 2 possessions from the first minute to the last, or not the last, but darn near close to the last minute. So in a game like this, a lot said about players and how they step up, but it's like this is one of those situations where you really look at it and like you're really glad to have the coach you have for a game like this, a future Hall of Famer, and not that Bill Finley isn't a Hall of Famer too, because he'll be in the Hall of Fame, I'm sure, to whatever capacity that is, Iowa State, college basketball, whatever, later in his career. But it's really nice to have a coach like Lisa on your side for a game like this, where the margins are thin margins, and you just need that one little tweak, that one little momentum shift just to push yourself over and get the dub. And Lisa definitely did that, showed why, in my opinion, like so many people think highly of her in this game. Really good adjustments in the second half. And on top of that, it's a real way to measure coach's mettle is after timeouts, after they had time to draw up a play and go through their team, how organized does their team look offensively or defensively? Are they able to score? Are they able to stop the other team from scoring? Out of bounds plays, etc. Those are another way to really evaluate coaching. But you saw in the second half, the first possession of each quarter, the third quarter and the fourth quarter, got Iowa a good offensive set, got Iowa a bucket or fouled. First possession, so I guess I should probably set this up first. So in the first half, for Iowa took 20-plus threes. And the thing about it is, they weren't necessarily bad threes. A lot of them were Caitlin Clark receiving a ball screen going to her left and stepping in pretty comfortably into a three-point shot. There were very few, I hesitate to even say there were really any super highly contested. Well, there's some Caitlin Clark, step backs are a little highly contested. But a lot of her threes in general were pretty wide open. She was able to step into them pretty cleanly. Or she was able to find someone else, whether it be Kate Martin, cleanly from three. And another player's missed their open threes, but I wouldn't react too much to that. That's not a big deal. We have good shooters. Like Gabby, she'll make them in the next game. But anyway, we had a lot of clean threes. But the problem, I feel like in the first half, is I feel like Iowa was getting lulled into settling for those threes. And it's not necessarily to say we can't hit those threes. But I think the way Iowa State was playing defensively, or you can maybe say it wasn't playing defensively, really kind of was lulling Iowa into settling for too many threes. And the problem necessarily wasn't even the fact to me that we were missing threes. It was about like what it was meaning for Iowa State. So I talked in the preview how Iowa was probably going to try and play a fast-paced game and try and really work on exposing Audie Crook's conditioning because she's a freshman. She still has to get better in that aspect. And watching Iowa State and some of the build up to this, it was kind of obvious, like, okay, Iowa is going to look to try and make her move in space and try and make her guard, try and make her run up and down the floor. So she wouldn't be able to play as many minutes because she's Iowa State's leading scorer. And ideally, Iowa would be able to play her off the floor by challenging her on defense. And Iowa was trying to make her move in space, but the problem with this is Iowa State was playing really deep drop coverage, which is one thing because Iowa also plays really deep drop coverage a lot with Sharon and Addie when they're in the game. But the way Iowa State, or specifically Audi, played it is different than what Iowa does. When you watch Iowa's centers in their drop ball screen coverage, they're still in a stance. They're still in an athletic stance. They're still getting low, and they're still ready so that if whoever has the ball for the opposing team decides to drive at Addie or Sharon, they're in an athletic stance. They're able to move their feet, and they're able to at least contest the shot. That's not really the case with Audi in this game. She was very much trying to conserve energy, if I'm trying to be nice. There was one play in particular, and I made note of the timestamp because I couldn't believe it. I don't think I've ever seen this in a game before. The 7:19, 7:20 minute mark of the second quarter, Iowa ran, again, one of their ball screens to get Caitlin Clark going to her left hand. And I don't know if I've ever seen a player just play ball screen coverage like this. So what you saw from Audi in that play was just not even really trying to play defense. Just hands on hips and just not even really trying. It's just kind of standing there, not in an athletic stance at all. And it was it reminded me of a business person in an elevator in some office building or whatever, and they're in an elevator and they're going up to I don't know, the 20th floor, and they're just checking their watch, hands on hips, oh gosh, can we just get there already? It's it felt like she's just gosh, can I just get to playing offense already? And again, you don't want to say she's not trying defensively, but I think she's probably self-aware enough to realize that she had to do some things to conserve energy offensively because she is very important to Iowa State offensively. They want to play for the post. So I think Iowa State was trying to conserve energy by not having her really do anything defensively other than just kind of stand out on the rim and get rebounds. And I think, again, the problem, and getting it back to how this relates to Iowa, the problem I feel with Iowa selling for so many threes is, in theory, when we're attacking Audi Crooks, say, in that ball screen coverage, or asking her to we're asking our center to set a screen for Caitlin to come off. In theory, we're trying to make Audi move, but she's not really moving. She's just kind of standing there. And in theory, the problem with that is Iowa's not really making her work. And I think that's kind of the main issue. And there was Holly Rowe made a comment at some point in the second half how Audi had managed to play 15 minutes in the first half. And really the main reason why I believe she was able to play so many minutes in that first half is just Iowa was, I guess, in theory testing her defensively, but she was just not budging. And what I think you saw Iowa make, and you started to see some adjustments at the end of the first half, but in particular you started to see it in the beginning of the third quarter. Our very first possession in that ball screen coverage, instead of just settling for a three-point shot at the perimeter, Caitlin just goes right at Audi and makes her guard. And again, the thing is, when you watch Audi play, often the first half she was not in an athletic stance, she was in a defensive stance. And the thing about that is, if you're not in a stance like you need to be, when a player does decide to drive at you, you're not going to be able to adjust to contest or what have you. And you're either going to pick up a foul or the offensive player is just going to be able to dribble around you. And you can tell there's a real point of emphasis, okay, we have to make her move. We have to make her defend. We have to make Audi expend energy. And as a result, Audi played 15 minutes in the first half and scored 12 points. Only 10 minutes in the second half and scored 3 points. Iowa did a much better job of playing her off the floor. And the thing about that is, it's not necessarily even an impact you'll see offensively, because we scored, 33 points in the second half, 34 points the first half. So it's not like attacking off the dribble against that coverage wasn't necessarily like something that impacted how we were able to score offensively. What it really did was it took Iowa State's most high usage offensive player off the floor and forced Iowa State to play a different way. And as a result, you saw Iowa State only score 24 points in the second half as opposed to 34 in the first half. And that was a really good adjustment by Lisa to like, all right, girls, let's really put some pressure on their centers defensively to move in space, because we're kind of settling for threes and not really making those centers move in space. And as a result, they're able to conserve their energy for offense. That was a really good adjustment by Iowa, really good recognition. And again, talking about just like Lisa's ability to draw up really nice plays after timeouts. Beginning of the fourth quarter, start with the horn set. Again, two post players at the top of the key. Caitlin Clark with the ball there. Two players in the corners. Caitlin takes the ball screen, going to her right. And because both post players are at the top of the key, there's no one in the paint necessarily to help. So Kate's able to back cut for a wide open layup. A really well-drawn set. And again, in a game like this where the margins are really, really, really razor thin, where either team really had a chance to win, little sets like that where you're able to just generate an easy layup for you, or you're able to change the way the game is played, are real difference makers. And I just thought highlight, to me, the players did a lot to earn this game, but in my opinion, this is honestly a coaching win. I think this was a really good job of Lisa Bluter making adjustments in the second half, drawing up some nice plays when Iowa needed them. And it's just, you're just glad that Lisa's on our side, because she's a Hall of Famer for a reason, and she showed it, I think, in this game. And another player that I feel pretty confident will be a Hall of Famer when she eventually calls it good from player aspect is Caitlin Clark. 3,000 points. A lot made about that. We don't need to go into all of that, I guess. There's a lot there. But was asked to do a lot for Iowa. And again, I feel like was kind of lulled for a bit there and maybe taking too many threes. Not that she can't make them. She 100% can make them. And she had a little bit of an off game. There were some threes she missed that she could definitely make. But again, really smart, adjusting the way the game is played, deciding to attack off the dribble, and take what Iowa State was giving her there. And also just a really low turnover game again. There's a misconception about Caitlin that she's turnover prone. And I guess what you can say, she had 3 turnovers. But I mean, given the amount that she has to handle the ball, only 9 turnovers as a team, to be able to find her teammates, create for themselves, create for her teammates, create for herself, while still being relatively not very turnover prone, is a credit to her. Again, she has I said this in the last video, she has the second lowest turnover percentage on the team. Again, there's a misconception that she's turnover prone. I just don't really agree with that. She's a good decision maker. And I think she eventually found her footing there in that second half, attacking, and was able to change the way the game was played. Though she still drops those bombs over like that one 30-footer she hit over Addie Brown, where it's not the best contest, but it's still slightly contested. And it's like, what can you do? It's like, not much. She's great in that way. And she showed great recognition as well, understanding like, hey, I'm being guarded by a freshman right now. I have that grown woman's strength. I can take her off the bounce and finish her contact. And I think, yeah, there's so much that could be said there offensively. And a lot, I think most people understand. I don't think people need me to tell them that Caitlin Clark's a great basketball player. That's very self-evident. And she's getting, though I will say, again, I made note in my last video, she had a usage percentage coming into this game of 39.9%. Usage percentage again, the amount of possessions that either results in player shooting, getting to the free throw line, or assisting on a play. And 39.9%, again, I don't have this officially, but I'm did some digging. I'm pretty sure that might be the highest usage percentage in the history of modern basketball, men's or women's, college or pro. So she's asked to do quite a bit for this team. And her usage percentage was high her first 3 years, but it's a lot higher this year. And so what you need, I think Iowa needs to start seeing is some development from other players. And I think you're definitely starting to see that from Kate Martin, scoring in a lot of versatile ways. She's being asked to score a lot more in the post-up area. With Monica's graduation, we have capable scorers down there in Hannah and Sharon, but Kate's definitely doing a lot to pick up the post scoring down there. Several times in this game, you saw her drive right and then spin back left for a fadeaway mid-range. 1 for 2 on one of those, but looks very comfortable shooting those. And as you're used to seeing, she moves well off the ball. Again, going back to the first play of the fourth quarter, I noted where she got a back cut off Caitlin assist. Later in that fourth quarter, you also saw her. Again, this is also senior recognition, recognizing you're being guarded by a freshman in Brown, and freshmen tend to ball watch. So, all right, they're going to ball watch, back cut, wide open layup. Just smart, intelligent basketball like that, and that's just what you come to expect from Iowa. And that's something you saw just in general from Iowa. Iowa's experience and know-how really won them the game late there, where Iowa State, their freshmen, still learning the process, making a couple bad passes, turnovers, where Iowa's players made the right plays, and they were hustling, etc. But Kate, really the one player besides Caitlin who was going offensively, able to hit a couple of threes, one that was pretty well contested. That's great to see. Able to take players off the bounce, able to move well without the ball. And, she brings it defensively as well. Blocked out at Crooks one time when Sharon did a good job of walling up against Crooks and was able to block her from behind. A couple big-time steals, a couple big-time rebounds. And then she poses after the rebound. It's like, oh, yeah, I am that woman right there. It's great to see. And it's great to see her take that, Robin to Caitlin's Batman role. You need help for Caitlin, and Kate Martin is definitely coming through in that aspect. Showing a lot of versatility in her offensive game, and she's going to bring it defensively. I think, and in terms of Iowa shooting, again, it's not the best shooting day for someone like Gabby Marshall, but I don't want to overreact to one shooting day. There'll be some days where the shot's on, there'll be some days when the shot's off. I think you just have to ride with the highs and lows. And the thing about Gabby is she still brings you great effort defensively. So even if her shot isn't missing, I'm not really that worried, because that shot's eventually going to come, and the defense is there. Though I will know Iowa still, I made note in my last video how I was allowing a high percentage of opponent attempts from three, around 43%, which is one of the highest rates allowed nationally. And what you saw in this game is Iowa went under a lot of screens for Iowa State against even shooters like Bellinger or Brown or whoever have you. And Iowa State didn't make us pay. But again, there would be some moments, I think, where teams will eventually, if a team's really on from three, there will be something to be had for Iowa there. For, not Iowa, the opposing team there. But again, they're still going to have to score to a level where they have to keep up with Iowa, which is really hard to do. We're one of the best offensive teams in the country. So I don't want to go too crazy about Iowa going under screens against players they probably shouldn't. But it is just something I thought I'd note. And I thought I'd give a shout out to Sharon Goodman for her defense as well. Out at Crooks, only 2 for 8 on her shots around the rim. 4 block shots for Sharon in this game. Did a really good job of walling up and not. She fouled twice. And Audi picked up a couple fouls on other players. That was the main thing that she was doing. But pretty good defense, honestly. Excuse me. Pretty good defense by Sharon on Audi in this game. It'll make things difficult for her, staying vertical and blocking a couple shots. There was that one stretch too where she got really good job of making a play, getting a block, getting the rebound, and then hustling. But unfortunately, she traveled, just got going a little bit too quickly. But that was like nearly like, oh my God, that was nearly the play of the game right there. She's making impact defensively. There'll be times I think just to get her, she's still in the aftermath of an ACL injury. You're not going to really be the same athletically anyway. There's still times where she might struggle moving laterally side to side, but able to defend well in the post, which is great to see. Ash Gottlieb. Oh, I guess I should also shout out Hannah Stolke for making another three. 1 for 2 from the three in this game, 2 for 2 from the free throw line. Again, just need to be confident taking it when it's open. Don't need to go too crazy. I don't necessarily know if I would want her shooting a lot of threes, but take them when they're open for sure. That's great to see. And so when so as a product of Iowa was consistently attacking Crooks and Atabu in ball screen coverage. You saw Bill eventually go to a small ball lineup where he had Addie Brown playing the 5. And what you saw there, and that was, again, Iowa did a good job of playing their centers off the floor with how they're approaching offensively. And what you saw there, in response to that, Iowa themselves also decided to go with small ball. They had Sida Fulter and Kate Martin play the 4 and 5 position. I think in a normal situation, Iowa probably would have had Hannah in there as well, because she has the speed to keep up with someone like Brown, and she would have been able to score in the post more easily against a player like that. I think that's mostly a precautionary thing. I think they're still probably trying to work her back from her injury, and they're saying to themselves like, okay, like we still don't want you moving maybe too much on the perimeter. So I think they decided like, no, we'll go with Sid and Kate in this situation, which worked really well. I think in the future, and the good news for Iowa in the next couple weeks, there's only 4 months left in the month of December, in the 24 days we have left in this month or so. So there'll be plenty of time for her to get back into a good health-wise. So she'll be able to play in that kind of situation. I just don't think Iowa want to ask too much of her coming back in this game, moving on the perimeter, having a guard shooter like Brown. And the good news in this situation is Sid and Kate really played excellent defense when Iowa State tried to post them up. They felt like brick walls in there where they just were not getting moved. It's great to see. It's a little like, sometimes I watch the NBA too, and in college and et cetera, and you're still kind of getting used to like, sometimes it can be a little bit jarring, like some of the rule differences. You're in the NBA, there's this 5-second closely guard rule where you can only dribble, like you can only crab dribble so long against somebody before it's like, okay, you have to do something with the ball. And it's like, man, there are times where that Addie Brown like was just dribbling for 7 to 10 seconds, just slowly crab dribbling her way in a post up just because she couldn't move Kate or Sid that well. And I'm just used to in the NBA and WNBA that being a 5-second closely guard rule, but that's not the case in college. It's just a little jarring for me. Some of the rule changes. But anyway, who cares about that? Great defense by Kate and Sid defending in the post, not getting moved, whether they're guarding Bristow or do sometimes try to post them up. Addie Brown was trying to post up a lot near the end of the game there. And I thought those two did a really good job of walling up and staying strong and physical. And both those players had 3 steals as well. You really saw them shine well defensively down the stretch of this game. Again, Iowa State, young team, still mistake prone in the fourth quarter game, in tight games, etc. They did a really good job taking care of the ball for them, but Iowa's experience got to them at the end, and it's great to see our Iowa's players make great plays. A narrative probably coming out of this game from an Iowa State perspective is they're probably missing Emily Ryan a lot. I don't know. I feel like Iowa State did a generally good job controlling the pace and just lost their heads a little bit down the stretch, which I guess you can make the argument Ryan would have made a difference down the stretch of this game. But I don't know. I just think Iowa made too many plays down the stretch there to win the game. Yeah. I think it's really all I think it needs to be said. We can get into awards. So I think for the defensive player of the game, there's a number of players you can give this to. You want to give a shout out to someone like Sharon. Did a pretty good job making things difficult for crooks around the post. Contesting shots, 4 blocks. Players like Kate or Sid making an impact defensively, getting steals, a couple clutch steals down the stretch of the game. Walling up on defense, not allowing themselves to be moved, guarding post-ups. Even when they were asked to guard the 4 and 5 positions. So there are a number of players you can give this defense/hustle award to. I'm always partial to Kate Martin, so I guess I'll go with Kate Martin. But there are a number of players you can give the award to. But she did a normal thing, great effort, a great hustle, and hold her own defensively. Nothing that'll surprise anybody. Nothing at all. And I think the game ball, I think it's just kind of evident. It's Caitlin Clark. Asked to do a lot for Iowa in this game. Asked to take a lot of the scoring load. Because really only Kate Barton was going for Iowa offensively besides Caitlin. And she didn't necessarily have the best shooting game at times. But she still made so many clutch plays for Iowa. Made so many clutch shots, clutch passes, able to find players. And did a good job taking care of the ball. It's also an ode to being the 15th player to score 3,000 points. The fastest player to do so. Iowa's best player. And they also made note of this in the broadcast, showing leadership ability, making a point of emphasis to, hey, talk to Gabby, someone she knows really well, saying like, hey, keep shooting, don't get down on yourself. And motivating your teammates in that way is something that's really important because coaches can do a lot to, like, from a leadership standpoint to elevate your team. But a lot of the best teams in basketball, the locker rooms are player-led. You need your experienced players. You need your best players to step up and be leaders. And it's great to see stuff like that. And she acknowledged in the postgame they could have played better. And again, that's something you want to see. You want to see, like, okay, like, ladies, we still have a standard we need to uphold. And we didn't quite meet our standard necessarily tonight, although it was a tough road win versus Iowa State. But we still do need to hold our standard a little bit higher. But that being said, honestly, it's really nice to know that Iowa can win necessarily ugly like this. Because the harsh reality of basketball is there are going to be nights where the shot just isn't falling for whatever reason. Maybe reasons aren't even within your control. And you have to be able to manufacture victory in spite of that. It kind of makes me think of like the Georgia game last year in the split tournament, where it's just a really nip and tuck game. It feels like the game's kind of in the balance. We can't quite get separation. And you just have to kind of find your way to will yourselves to win the game. And we saw that in this game. Just making smart basketball plays, cutting off the ball, moving off the ball, getting steals, hustle plays, etc. And that's how you manufacture victory from the jaws of defeat in a really tough environment against a hungry Iowa State team. So there's a lot. I think there's a lot positively that can be said about winning a game, quote unquote, ugly. Not really that a win can never be ugly. I'd much rather take an ugly victory over Iowa State than a pretty loss. I know most people feel the same. So, yeah, I think now I can start to turn the page, start to look ahead to Iowa's next game in Madison against Wisconsin. So it feels like it's been a while since I started following this around like what I'd probably say I started following Iowa basketball women's wise probably Sam Logic's senior year consistently. And for the life of me, it's like, have we ever lost to Wisconsin ever since I've been following this team really? And so I decided to go down that rabbit hole again to find out how long it's been. It's like, it's one of those like wow kind of moments where the last time Iowa lost to Wisconsin was February 11th of 2007. I was in elementary school. So that is a long ass time. I couldn't believe that. I imagine there's probably some winning streaks against a single school are longer than that. Like I imagine UConn's probably beat up on some teams for like a long stretch of time too. They probably have longer winning streaks against teams like that too. But like, man, that's a really long time of not losing to an opponent. And I wouldn't expect that to change going into this game. Wisconsin, a couple losses on the year. The similar opponent that Iowa's played to Wisconsin, and we both played Kansas State. They lost on the road at 18 to Kansas State. Wisconsin did, and they were down 20 plus going into the fourth quarter. So it was a worse loss than probably an 18-point deficit even showed. And you can kind of understand why, looking at just the way things are going for the Badgers. Only, from what I can tell, playing a 6-player rotation. And 4 of those players are underclassmen, so they're not even a particular experienced team. 3 sophomores, 1 freshman. Their best player is one of those sophomores in Sarah Williams. 7th nationally in blocks per game, 6'4". So that's really the biggest challenge, I would say, from Iowa's perspective. Although, that being said, Iowa isn't necessarily playing as much through the post this year. And you'd probably look for Iowa to bounce back shooting-wise after this kind of game, although you're on the road. It's tough to shoot sometimes on the road. So, I mean, I guess that would be a scenario where Iowa could potentially have troubles in this game, is going to if they have another poor shooting game on the road and Sarah shuts things down in the interior. But I think the main issue for Wisconsin, the main issue for Wisconsin, from what I can tell, is amongst those 6 rotation players, 4 of those players are 5'8" or below height-wise. It's really just Sarah that's really the only impact player who's really has any height that could really bother Iowa. And given that lack of height, they're not really going to be probably in a great position to contest Iowa's shot-making ability, whether it be from Caitlin Clark, again, who's 6 foot, Kate Martin, who's 6 foot. Gabby has good size. So they're probably not going to be able to do a whole lot to bother our shot-making. I mean, our length is probably going to bother them on the other end. They're not a very good shooting team. Wisconsin as a team is only shooting 66% from the line. I think they only had 2 players shooting 75% or higher from the free throw line, or maybe it was 70% or higher from the free throw line. I don't remember. And only 1 player shooting above 40% from the three-point line. Deanna Jimenez. They're shooting 33% as a team from the three-point line. So it's not a particularly good shooting team, despite the fact that they're a guard-oriented team. It's really just a team in general that struggles to score the ball. They've only scored over 1 point per possession twice this year against Boston College and Northern Illinois. And you look at some of their games, I mean, 0.8 points per possession against UW Milwaukee. 0.8 points per possession against a true mid-major like that is really, really poor. And it's kind of a consistent theme you've seen from them this year. Just not a particularly good scoring team. If you're scoring under a point of possession, that's not good offensively. And if you're doing that against mid-majors that you have more resources than from a recruiting standpoint, et cetera, that's not very good at all. So they really build their backbone of their team defensively. And they've done a good job playing defense throughout this year. They've only given up over 1 point per possession defensively one time this year. That was against Kansas State. So they've held up defensively against a lot of teams they've played so far this year. And the shot blocking of Williams goes a long way in establishing that defensive spine that makes things difficult for teams. But again, there's not much depth there. And if Iowa gets her in foul trouble, the floodgates really might open. And even if Sarah's on the floor, I don't really know if Iowa's going from three and doesn't necessarily have to rely on shots around the rim. It'll be difficult for Wisconsin to keep up with what Iowa's got going. So overall, this feels like a comfortable win for Iowa. You never want to take things, I guess, for granted. Going on the road in Big Ten play. But that being said, when it's been 15 and a half years since you've lost to a basketball team, you kind of do start to take it for granted. So it's a game I would expect Iowa to continue their streak and go to 10-1. But it'll be a good opportunity, I guess, to see what our team's made of again on the road. But I would expect to win. So in short, a great win for Iowa tonight versus Iowa State. Hawkeye State forever. A great showing, great way to find a way to win, even when you're not playing your best. Great job of the coaches finding ways to change the game up and force Iowa State to make adjustments so the game is more along Iowa's preferred way of playing. Just a really good showing from Iowa tonight. And I'll see y'all on Sunday.